Welcome back, Outlaws. On today's episode, we're going to be investigating a roof leak on our 2004 Chevy Silverado, so stay tuned. After the last few rainstorms, I was getting this really funky smell inside the cab of the truck, so I decided to check it out. And sure enough, you can see here where the moisture's been wicking in and getting the headliner wet, causing a stain. I'm going to have to check it out and see exactly where it's coming from, but I have my suspicions. Taking a closer look at the bottom of the window and along the sides for any other stains or places that water could be leaking through and draining down, I'm not seeing a hint of anything. So where could it be coming from? I think it's coming from up here. Let's go outside and check it out. After checking the window out thoroughly for leaks, I found none, and this seems to be the likely culprit. We're going to take the two screws off, the one here and the one here, and see if we can pull this off and look inside. I parked at the beach one day and the seagulls pooped on my truck. Seagull poop contains a lot of acid and damages your paint pretty quickly. I didn't realize this and didn't get it washed fast enough, and they really screwed my paint up. I'm going to have to repair this at a later date. We'll start by getting these two screws removed and see what we're in for. Hopefully, we can see where it's coming in and leaking and staining the headliner. I can already feel that the light's a little loose. Normally, these are stuck in there pretty good. I'm going to have to check a little further, but I have a feeling that this is pretty much where the leak's coming from. The manufacturer uses a rubberized gasket that gets dry and hardened and is stuck in there pretty good. If that's the case, you should get a rag and a plastic prying tool. That will help protect your paint and the light while prying it off. Fortunately for me, my gasket was hardened and wasn't even stuck to the roof of the truck, so it was easy to pull out. Let's get it checked out. Look back here. We can disconnect the little wire and make it easier to look at. This connector has a little plastic tab that you can gently pull back and will allow the connector to separate from the light. At this point, I'm going to thoroughly inspect my lamp and see if I could see any water damage or any place around the gasket that it was leaking in. Looking at the top of the gasket, I think I see an area right here where it's separated and broken through. It looks like there's been some moisture leaking in on top of the lamp too. Looking here closer at the truck where the gasket sits, it's also dried and cracked. After looking at both the surfaces of the light and the truck where the gasket meet, I feel pretty confident that this is where my water leak has been coming from. I'm going to begin by cleaning the surface of the truck and removing all the dust as much as possible. Be careful not to lose these little clips. They're hard to find when they hit the ground. I'm going to give this one a little pinch to tighten it up so it stays in place while reinstalling the brake light. Now that we've removed some of the surface dust and dirt, we're going to work on getting some of the harder stuff off. There's several products you can use, but I'm going to use window cleaner because that always tends to get some of the stuff off and works well for me. It's important that you get your surface clean, because if you don't, it will allow areas that the gasket will not adhere, and then you'll have another leak. Now we're ready to work on getting some of the stuff that's really stuck on there off. Looking here, you can see that I'm using a plastic scraper. Don't use a metal one because you're going to screw up your paint. I was going to refurbish my stock brake light and put LED bulbs in here, but then I decided to look for some newer ones that already had the LED bulbs in them. As you can see, looking here, the plastic is faded and worn out, so I think it's time to replace it with a new one. After researching several different brake lights and different manufacturers, I was able to settle on this one. It seemed pretty easy to put in, and I think it will look good. It's got LEDs, bright ones, on both sides, and it had the same type of connector and looked like it would mount fairly easily. Let's get this plastic off and give it a little closer look. The best part about this light, the reason I chose it, was it's got the American flag when you hit the brake. Next, I want to pull this gasket out and check out what type of mounting hardware and pieces that I have, so we can figure out how to get this thing mounted good without it leaking. This is the foam gasket that comes with the unit. It has a sticky back on it that you can peel off and mount to the truck or the light. I recommend mounting it to the light first. That way it lines up and you know that all the areas are sealed. It is a foam gasket, so I'm having my doubts in this keeping the water out. I may have to come up with something else just to make sure that I don't have another leak. This looks a little off, so I'm going to pull it off and check again and make sure that I have it lined up and on the right way. It never hurts to do that, to double check your work. That way you get it right the first time. I had it on right. I just needed to do some more adjusting. So we're going to give it a second shot, make sure that it is all lined up and it fits right. Go around and double check your gasket, pressing firmly on all the surfaces to make sure that it's adhering to the light. Now let's check out the mounting hardware. We've got 2 screws and we've got 4 rubber grommets. These rubber grommets will protect the light. You're going to put one on the top and one on the bottom. These will also help seal the openings where the screws go through to help keep moisture out. By putting these on now, this will make the installation that much more easy. You won't have to worry about dropping the grommets and looking for them somewhere on the ground. Alright, now we're ready for the installation of our new light. This should go pretty easy. We're just going to reconnect the connector and install the screws. By installing the grommets and screws first, looking here, you can see how much easier it made to line them up. I always recommend doing these jobs by hand. If you use an electric drill or driver, sometimes you can over tighten it and crack the lens of the lamp. It may take a little extra time doing it this way, but you can also feel the tension that you have on the gasket to make sure that you have a good seal. This is where you can adjust with your screwdriver the tension on the gasket, making sure that it's not over tight and pinching the gasket so it won't seal. It looks pretty good. It's a great fit. It fits just like the factory lamp did. But up here, going back to my concern about the foam gasket and potentially drying out and leaking, I've come up with a solution that I think will work. I'm going to apply a thin bead of silicone. I think this should stop the water from getting in around the gasket should it dry out. I'm going to use some painter's tape to make it easier to apply the silicone. That way I don't have a bunch of silicone sticking in places that I don't want it. I looked for a gray or black color silicone, but I couldn't find it at the time, and we were going to be getting some more rain soon. I just want to go ahead and get this sealed up. At a later date, I'll find that other colored silicone and maybe reapply it. After laying your bead down, go ahead and take your finger and kind of push it down into the crack, smoothing it out. This will remove any air bubbles and push the silicone down into the voids. Now that we've applied the silicone, I'm going to cover this up and let it dry and cure for a little bit. After waiting about an hour, I'm going to go ahead and remove the tape at this point. By doing this now, this will keep the silicone from drying on top of the tape, and when you remove it at a later time, it won't pull the silicone out of the joint. It's still soft enough now to where it won't stick to the tape, but will still stay in the crack. You don't see that much these days. I'm going to keep this stock lamp just in case I need it in the future. Now let's see how this thing looks at night. There's the lights that light up the bed of the truck. My camera doesn't film that well at night, so you have to forgive me on that. And now for the brake light itself. Let's see how this thing looks. Yeah, it's pretty bright. You'll be able to see that for a ways away. And there's the American flag. How cool is that? I'm really happy with this install and think it was a great improvement over the stock brake light. Thanks again for watching.